They stood at the center of the Third Reich, but they ended their days as nameless ghosts in the countryside. The wives of the deadliest regime in history did not meet the hangman. They simply vanished into the shadows. By the early 1950s, the grand life ended. The stolen mansions were gone, the servants disappeared, looted European artworks vanished from their walls. West Germany rebuilt its cities and pushed its population past 50 million. Factories hummed again. But these women remained locked out of the new economy. They moved to remote villages deep in Bavaria or hidden valleys in Austria. They needed to avoid public recognition. A widow would pack a single leather suitcase. She would board a slow train to a town where nobody knew her face. She would stand at the local post office and fill out registration papers under a new identity. The heavy silence of their cramped apartments replaced the loud roar of state ceremonies. They had nothing left. The money ran out. Their own children legally changed their last names. Sons and daughters moved to different cities to escape a legacy built on a ruined continent. Poverty and deep suspicion followed these widows everywhere they tried to settle. Nobody built monuments for them. Nobody handed out state pensions. Former party friends cut all contact. Local neighbors kept their distance. While former allies vanished, one widow hiding in northern Germany survived until 1985 with total certainty that she did nothing wrong. Lina Heydrich fed the fire with her husband's official documents before packing her bags. Fearing Czech resistance fighters, she fled straight to Fehmarn, an island in the Baltic Sea. She bought a small farmhouse and turned the property into a guest house for survival. Running a coastal business did not force her to keep quiet. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, she invited journalists into her home. She gave interviews claiming her husband only followed orders and had no real part in the killings. This defense deliberately ignored the Wannsee Conference of January 1942, where officials planned the destruction of millions. Reinhard Heydrich chaired that exact meeting just months before his assassination in Prague. Her children faced exclusion at local schools. Lina never cared. She maintained this alternate reality for 4 decades. She died in 1985, still denying any wrongdoing. Her final breath went to defending the architect of the Holocaust. Lina Heydrich kept her remote farm to the very end, but Emmy Göring's wife lost her entire fortune in an instant. 8th of June 1973, Munich. An old woman died in poverty. To understand this crash, we shift back to the Austrian Alps in June 1945. Allied soldiers walked into Fishhorn Castle. They found Emmy surrounded by stolen European art. The confiscation started immediately. Troops carried out the French paintings. They boxed up the silver. Men and women who used to bow down to the Reich's unofficial First Lady now called her a criminal to her face. They took everything she owned. Her husband faced the International Tribunal. The Nuremberg trials officially opened in November 1945 to prosecute the surviving leadership. Hermann sat in the main dock. Emmy sat in a detention center, separated from her young daughter for months. Then came October 1946. Hermann swallowed a glass cyanide capsule in his cell just hours before the hangman arrived. Emmy eventually walked free, but she had nothing left. She returned to Munich and moved into a small apartment. The plaster walls stayed completely bare. No stolen masterpieces, no fine clothes, no friends. She tried selling a memoir about her past life, but publishers threw the manuscript back at her. The money dried up. Her health faded quietly inside that cramped room. She died on the 8th of June 1973. No public funeral. While Emmy Göring faced poverty, the SS chief's wife lost touch with reality during interrogations. How could the wife of Heinrich Himmler know nothing? Margaret Himmler repeated this claim at every session. Her husband took cyanide in May 1945. The Allies brought Margaret to a military prison near Nuremberg. This site held the highest-ranking officials of the regime. Investigators wanted answers. They got pure denial. In adjacent rooms, prosecutors reviewed evidence of SS crimes. Meanwhile, Margaret insisted her husband was a good man. She denied any knowledge of the camps. She denied the mass executions. Investigators found her defense absurd. She lived at the dead center of the elite circle. She faked ignorance to avoid the tribunal. It worked. The Allies released her in early 1946. The public proved far less forgiving. Constant threats from anti-Nazi groups forced her to change her name. She vanished from public view entirely. Marguerite Himmler died in 1967. 0 obituaries. Interrogations and poverty waited for the survivors. But the health of Martin Bormann's wife collapsed back in 1945. Investigators would only find his bones in 1998. Her own end arrived much faster. She spent the final months of the war inside the Berghof residence in the Bavarian Alps. When the front lines collapsed, the cancer inside her body accelerated alongside the dying regime. She dragged her children south through the chaos of the ruined country. They eventually reached Murano in northern Italy, a common transit hub for fleeing Nazi officials. Gerda died from disease and exhaustion there in March of 1946. She never answered for her years at the center of power. Her children scattered across the country. To figure out how these women ended up as fugitives running across Europe, you have to rewind to the spring of 1945. Cameras flashed inside the Nuremberg courtroom. The International Military Tribunal originally indicted 24 major war criminals. The world watched the top generals answer for their crimes. Their wives stayed behind in a ruined empire. Their daily reality relied on one very simple transaction. Men held the high political ranks, and women collected the stolen mansions. Now those powerful husbands sat in cold jail cells awaiting the gallows. The luxury vanished overnight. Millions of victims suffered for those exact privileges. The last days of April 1945 arrived. The collapse of those final April days did not just isolate the elite. Wives of ordinary officers faced the exact same panic. 900 dead bodies piled up in a single town over just a few days. The Soviet flag went up over the Reichstag on the 2nd of May. Before refugees flooded the streets, the town of Demmin held about 15,000 people. Now it turned into a sprawling graveyard. Women gripped heavy kitchen knives. Mothers crushed poison ampules between their teeth. The cold water of the local river swallowed entire families who chose to jump. They dreaded the advancing Soviet troops. They expected immediate retribution. But for the wives of Nazi officers, mass suicide represented something deeper than a quick escape from the victors. It proved their final loyalty to the falling state. Surrender meant disgrace. But the street horror of Demmin fades compared to what unfolded simultaneously below ground in Berlin. Magda Goebbels stood in the damp air, buttoning clean clothes on her children while the capital collapsed. She had already decided to murder all 6 of them. The Führer bunker sat 8.5 meters deep beneath the Reich Chancellery Garden. A 3-meter thick concrete roof blocked out the noise of the Soviet artillery. Magda and Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels moved their family into the shelter weeks earlier. The kids were between 4 and 12 years old. A world without the Reich meant nothing to their mother. She maintained a strict routine. She carefully washed them, combed their hair, and dressed them in spotless outfits every single morning. Yet on the evening of May 1st, 1945, she personally forced poison into their mouths. A bunker doctor provided the heavy sleeping medication. The children drank it. They quickly lost consciousness in the narrow beds. Magda moved down the line. She slid a cyanide capsule between each child's teeth. She pressed down. The glass ampules crunched sharply in the heavy silence of the underground bedroom. All 6 children died side by side. Hours later, the parents walked up the concrete stairs into the ruined garden. Joseph shot his wife and put a bullet in himself. The flames consuming their bodies burned for the 2nd straight day. 24 hours earlier, loyalists used that same garden to cremate the creator of the regime. Where was the man who set all Berlin on fire while over 2 million Soviet soldiers stormed the streets? He was hiding deep underground inside a tight concrete room. By late April 1945, the capital was just smoking rubble and falling artillery shells. The heavy siege pushed the remaining elite down into the bunker complex. Down in the narrow hallways and dimly lit rooms, everyone knew the end was approaching. On April 29, 1945, Adolf Hitler married Eva Braun in a brief underground ceremony. Only a handful of loyal witnesses stood by, while enemy forces advanced just blocks away. The very next afternoon, on April 30th, the couple walked into his private study together. Eva swallowed a cyanide capsule. Hitler shot himself in the right temple. On April 30th, 2 bodies burned with gasoline.